Okay, so I was asked to do a video for some wartime cookery because obviously VE Day is coming up on Friday. So I thought I'd try and make it a little bit more interesting and not just about the recipe, but talk a little bit about food in the war times, okay? So before the Second World War was declared, Britain used to import 55 million tonnes of food from other countries each year. Okay, so this food would come via ship, okay, from other countries over into England. So once the war was declared in September 1939, okay, the British government decided to try and stop importing as many foods from other countries, because the problem was there was German submarines that were coming into our coastline and trying to blow up our ships. So the concerns of not having as much food coming into the country was that the cost of food was going to rise. Shops would start to put their prices up, which meant that poorer people couldn't afford to get as much stuff. And the fact that people who could afford to buy a lot of stuff would start to stockpile stuff, so buy large quantities of stuff to keep at home in their cupboards when they needed it, which meant that there was less supplies within shops. So the British government decided to introduce something called rationing. So my dad was actually one of the people who was born during the Second World War. He was one of twins, so I'll share a little photo with you. So as you can see, that's my dad and his twin sister. So once they decided to introduce the rationing, okay, what happened was everyone had to register, okay, so they could get their own ration book. Now this is an original because this was actually my dad's when he was a little boy, okay, that his mum had to apply for him, okay, because he wasn't old enough to, and so it has the person's name on and their address from a long time ago, okay, and then I'm going to explain how it was used. Okay, so you'd have your ration book, all right, and what would happen is you would decide what shop you wanted to use. So in here somewhere, my grandmother obviously decided to go to, I think it's Barrett's on Dereham Road in Norwich, to get the meat for the family. And then for other things, obviously supermarkets were not really a thing, to be honest, so you would have like markets, butchers, bakers, that kind of thing. But she used to go to the International Stores, which was a small shop on Dereham Road near where they lived. So as you got your things, so say you went in and you ordered, for instance, your eggs, okay, your shop would then stamp what you've had, okay, so that way you couldn't then trick people and go into another shop and get an additional amount, okay. So you would have it all stamped for, or they would cross off what you've had, okay, like so. And some shops used to, so this was for tea, okay, they would cut out as you use your quota. So you'd go in, get your tea bags, and then the shopkeeper would cut out the voucher, okay, to say you'd been in and got your tea bags, like so. Okay, so the average adult a week, this would be their food allowance, okay. So we've got 2 ounces of butter, we've then got 4 ounces of ham or bacon you could have, and then you've got 4 ounces of marge, which would usually be probably used within like baking and things like that, where you're making recipes up from it. Then we've got 8 ounces of sugar, yet again towards baking. Then you'd have 3 pints of milk for an adult, so that's all your cups of teas there. Any other things that you put it in any kind of baking or having it with anything like scrambled eggs and things. Then we've got 2 ounces of cheese, 1 fresh egg, okay, so you'd probably be encouraged to keep chickens back in those days, okay, so you had more eggs, all right. And then 2 ounces of tea. Now, you wouldn't have had necessarily tea bags, so it would have been like loose leaf tea, but you'd have had 2 ounces. So, I mean, when I think of how many cups of teas we have in the staff room each day, yeah, the staff would have had to be really careful, because obviously they wouldn't have had that much tea for the week to survive on. Okay, and then you could have had meat, and it would have been to the value of 1 shilling and 6pence per week. Now, that would be approximately about 6p worth of meat, it going by today's money. Right, once every 2 months you were able to get a jar of jam. So if you think this has to last a whole 2 months, okay? And then once a month you were allowed 12 ounces of sweeties, okay? So when you think this is going to be spread over 4 weeks, all right, when you think about it, it's probably not a huge amount of sweeties in there. Okay, so sweeties were quite a luxury. And I remember my dad saying that his mum would get a Mars bar from the shop, and she would actually divide it into 3 portions, so him and his 2 sisters could have a little bit each. Okay, so looking at the ingredients we got, I had to try and find a recipe we could make out of these bits, okay? So we decided to use quite a versatile recipe, okay? And we're actually going to make batter. Now, I know that probably sounds really dull to you, but we're actually going to make pancakes from the batter, so I thought you guys would probably prefer that. But people used to make batter in quite large quantities because then they could then make lots of different recipes with it. So they could use it towards putting with making Yorkshire puddings and putting with joints of meat for a roast, which was quite a luxury. Using towards putting in with sausages, so you use your meat allowance to buy sausages, and then put in the batter in with the sausages to make toad in the hole. You could also make the batter and add like vegetables that you'd homegrown, okay, or little bits of meat, and you could make what is classed as a fritter, okay, so similar to a pancake but with things in. You could also do savoury pancakes, so you could have used some of your cheese allowance and some of your ham allowance and made a savoury pancake to roll up, okay, in the pancake. But today we're going to make some sweet pancakes. So I'm now going to show you how to make the sweet pancakes. Okay, so once your knob of butter has melted in the pan, okay, you're then going to add a little bit of your batter mix. Now, they would have only added a very small amount during wartime because they had to be careful with how much food they used, okay, because there wasn't a lot to go around and they were having to feed families. So it's best to sort of just, as it's cooking, just be able to loosen the edges, okay? You'll start to see it sort of bubble on the surface, okay? Then it's a good time to then flip your pancake over, like so. As you can see, it started to brown. Okay, so once you've sort of browned it on one side, okay, flip it over, just finish off the other side. Okay, so once your pancake is cooked, you can then plate it up, like so. So it's quite common that when you had pancakes, you would have the topping of some jam on top of it, okay? And then you would roll it up and eat it. Now, with the jam, you would literally only get 1 jar of jam once every 2 months. So you had to be quite careful with how much you used and how often.